Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Product School webinar. Thanks for joining us today. Just in case you didn't know, Product School offers product management certificates online and at our 20 campuses worldwide. On top of that, every week we offer some amazing local product management events and host online webinars, live streams, and Ask Me Anything sessions. Head over to productschool.com after this webinar to check them out.
Hey folks, my name is Richard I. Porter, and I'm doing this webinar with Product School. I want to thank you very much for joining me to hear what it is that I've got to say and to let me share with you some of the ideas I have. The central premise of this presentation is about how leadership is not an option, it is a necessity, whether you're leading in war or leading in product. And it's really an opportunity for me to try and compare the experiences that I've had leading in war to the experiences that I've had leading in product. So that kind of gets to where all this is coming from. You know, I spent 8 years in the Marine Corps leading Marines in combat and helping people to analyze and understand information, manage stakeholders, align teams to accomplish goals. Basically, I was learning how to be a product manager without realizing that I was learning how to be a product manager. And in my time in the Marine Corps, much like in my time in product management, I picked up on these lessons and these ideas on how people can lead really well, how you can outline a vision, a mission, how you can communicate that, explain to a team why I've brought all of you here together, what it is that I think we need to try and accomplish together, how you can help a team to understand that you're there to invest in them, to help them achieve what they want to, how you can use that trust to drive towards a mission that you've established together, how you can set the example in doing all of this stuff, and how it can be important to have positional authority as a part of this, but how all of these things exist in relationship to each other, and how you need to keep those in balance. And if you don't keep them in balance, it can be pretty problematic for both you as a leader and for your team. So if that sounds interesting to you, I'd encourage you to continue watching, and I'd love to hear your thoughts after you've finished and see what resonated well with you and what areas you think might be improved. So I kind of got to this earlier, but I want to explicitly talk to this. I observe that there is a trinity of leadership, regardless of whether you're leading in the military or you're leading in a product team. And that trinity is outlined here. The three most important things are setting the example, outlining the mission and the vision in a concrete, concise way, and understanding that there need to be trade-offs and that you're going to be responsible as the leader for helping people to prioritize within those trade-offs and to do what needs to be done. And then three is that team itself, understanding that the only way to motivate a team, the only way to engage a team, the only way to accomplish this mission is to have a team of people to do it with. And the only way to have that team following you is for them to know that you are going to put their interests as high as you possibly can, sometimes higher than the mission itself. You're going to recognize that some of those trade-offs that we mentioned under the mission may need to be made against team's welfare, and that sometimes the team's welfare may need to be traded off against mission. As an example, you might think of how in the military we would sometimes have to ask our teammates, our Marines or soldiers or sailors or airmen, if someone served in one of those other organizations, to put themselves in a situation of danger that may lead to their injury or even their death. And while it might be possible to use positional authority, to use rank, to order someone to do something frivolous or silly like clean toilets or pick up trash, if you're going to ask somebody to risk their life, if you're going to ask somebody to go into a situation in which they will be in danger, the only way you can do that, the only way that that will be effective, is if they know and recognize that you love them, that you care about them, that you are looking out for their welfare, that you have evaluated the mission carefully, that you have outlined and planned for it as well as you possibly can, and that you would yourself go into this risky situation. Now, you may not be able to go into that risky situation at all times, but your team has to know that you would be willing to do so. Now, how does this translate into the product world? Well, there may be times when you need to really push hard and get something done, where you need to work nights and weekends to get a feature shipped or a launch out the door. But your team has to know that even if you may not be able to code those features or those updates yourself, that you would if you could, that this mission is worth it and that you've made that evaluation. And the way that you do that is by investing in them in advance, by showing them that you've put in the time and the energy and the effort to make sure that the mission is one that is worth doing, to articulate how it ties in to higher level missions of the overall company, of the overall business unit or division. You want them to have trust and confidence in you that you have already done this evaluation and that you wouldn't be asking for them to make any sacrifices for it if you hadn't already decided that this was in their best interest and that it was worth accomplishing. And you have to be able to articulate that. Now, that may mean sometimes that you need to make a trade-off and not accept the mission, that you need to say, hey, boss, I don't think this feature is worth burning our people out on. We need more time, or we're not going to do it. It's just not that important. And your team's trust and confidence in you depends on them knowing that you have or would do that in the right circumstances if that needs to happen. A common example of this in a military context that a lot of people may be familiar with, although I don't know, maybe some of the folks watching this haven't seen this HBO series, but the HBO series Band of Brothers talks about a great military leader, Dick Winters. And he is someone who was a phenomenal military leader and outlines this trinity. If you think about setting the example, if you think about how he led on all of the training, he was at the front of the runs, he was constantly encouraging people. He set the right example by not gambling with the men. He was always in the thick of fighting personally whenever it was practical to be such. Whenever there was a mission, he was always making sure that he had articulated and understood it, had made it clear and concise in a way that each of his teammates could consume and execute on. The assault on the Break Corps Battery that happened on D-Day is something that is still taught at West Point to this day as an example of a prepared or hasty assault on a prepared position. That mission wasn't fully defined. They weren't supposed to be in that place. So it was a hastily created mission that was well communicated and concisely explained and executed on with violence by everybody, including by Dick Winters himself in setting the example. But you might also recall towards the end of that television show, there's a mission in which his company goes and executes a raid and they capture German prisoners. And one of the higher ups, one of the colonels, likes it so much that he wants it done again on the next night, even though the war is about to be over and there isn't really any purpose to it. And on that night, Dick makes a decision and communicates to his people that they will not execute that mission, that their lives are not worth it, that his team is more important than the mission. And we have to keep in mind that that's a trade-off that we have to be willing and ready and capable of making as leaders in order to maintain our leadership status. And that brings me to this one that's kind of here in shadows. And I left it in the last place because it matters. The authority matters. You need to have some level of authority so that everybody knows who to look to for this example, to understand the mission, to understand who's leading the team and who is looking out for their welfare. But if you put your investment and your attention and your time and energy into the authority before you've taken the time to properly make sure that you are setting the example, that you have outlined the mission, that you have the team's welfare at heart, you're setting yourself up for a situation where you're going to fail and it's going to be very difficult to recover. So with each of these, if you find yourself failing on it, it's important for you to put in the time and effort to find a mentor to help you develop it. And if you observe it happening in others, you need to figure out a way to, with tact and respect, help enable that leader. Because fundamentally, if people around you that are being led don't see the example being set by the leader, someone new is going to be the leader. Someone else is going to be setting the right example, and that person is going to be the leader. If the mission isn't going to be explained and articulated and concisely communicated to the people that need to understand it, someone else is going to set a mission, and that person is going to be the leader. And if the team notices, even if you're succeeding at these others, but you don't communicate this sense of caring, this sense of love and appreciation for your team is going to find someone else who does. And if you're lucky, that'll be somebody else within your own organization, and they may still continue to work there. Or they may go find someone completely in a different organization, at a different company, that will treat them with that respect and that will know them and look out for their welfare and develop them and employ them in accordance with their abilities. So each one of these is absolutely essential. In fact, the authority is kind of like the icing on a cake. It's something that is helpful in order to follow through on these three most important principles, on this trinity of leadership. But of the three, it's actually the only one that is not truly essential. These other ones must be delivered on. The first one is an absolute no-fail mission. It must happen at all times. And the other two, the mission and the team, well, these are very, very important. They have to be done, and they're in tension with each other. But you can't give up on that first one. The fourth, that's one you're going to have to be very cautious with. It can be very helpful, but you must make sure that you've done these first three. Now, I've got another story to try and help put this into a different set of terms, and that's the parable of the hoplite. I want you to think of an ancient Greek soldier, a hoplite. Hoplites carry these big, giant shields. It's called hoplon shield. It's made of bronze and wood. And they're so big, they're not actually made exclusively for the soldier himself that's carrying it. It's made so that the shadow of it, the side of it, also protects the man to his left. And so in our analogy, remember that trinity of leadership? Well, there is a physical manifestation of each of those in this hoplite. The shield itself represents the team because it's what protects and it's what defends the thing that's going to accomplish this goal. The soldier is protecting himself, the soldier is protecting the next soldier next to him. And holding it up means that you're putting the team first. But there's a reason you're here, and that's this spear. The spear is the mission. The whole purpose of being here, the soldier's whole purpose is to put that pointy end into somebody else, into the enemy. That's the purpose, that's the mission that we're here to execute. And sometimes the team has to take a back seat and the shield needs to come down so that the mission can be executed over top with the sword. And sometimes the original mission isn't going to work and that spear is going to break. And he's going to have to draw his Xiphos sword instead and use that as the pointy part that executes the mission. And sometimes that happens in product development. Sometimes the original feature isn't going to actually accomplish the purpose, and you're going to have some other method of getting done what you need to get done. But there's that constant trade back and forth between the mission and the team. Now, this transverse crest that our hoplite is wearing in this parable, the side-to-side crest on top of his head, that's the authority. That's the thing that tells everybody, look at me. I am the person to understand the example from. You can look at me to understand whether we're prioritizing the mission and the team by holding our shields high. You can understand whether we're prioritizing executing the mission right now by using the spears more emphatically. In the dust and the blood and the confusion, this transverse crest and its authority makes a ready reference for everybody to be able to observe the example and see whether the team is priority, the mission is priority, or whether we're balancing between them right now. So we've talked about the authority, we've talked about the mission, and we've talked about the team. We've left out what I've already said is the most important thing, the example, setting the example, and what in this hoplite can be that example for us. Well, it's not glamorous, it's not glitzy, it's not shiny like the shield or like the spear or like the transverse eye-catching crest. It's his sandals. It's the leather that gets blood and sweat soaked, that gets ground into the dirt, that gets stepped upon, that gets forgotten about, that can never fail. His footing is the most important thing this hoplite has, in spite of all the other nice things we've talked about. The mission being accomplished through the shield and the spear. The team being protected through the shield. The transverse crest showing everybody to look at him. None of these would mean anything without having his footing dependent on those sandals, regardless of whether they are ignored, stepped on, dirty, sweaty, or bloody. And that's what I want to impress upon anybody who's paying attention to me, that these other things are very important. it is crucial to have the mission set out and to have everybody understand it. It is necessary to have a team that you are protecting the welfare for and that everybody is going to understand. That they know that you're going to be trading back and forth between the mission and their welfare. It's also important that people recognize who to look to in times of need through this authority, but what you cannot fail on, what must always be maintained, and what you can never let slip is the example. So let us all be the example of what we want from our teams, and let us all be the leaders that we hope to see in others. I hope that by spending this time with me, you've been able to hear a few of my thoughts from my time in the military and my time in product about how important it is to set the example, to outline the mission, to take care of your team, and how important it can be to make sure you're managing authority effectively. If you're interested in hearing more of my thoughts or connecting with me, I run the website theartofproductwar.com on product and veterans. I have a personal blog website also, richardiporter.com, and I'd be happy to communicate or engage with you on either of those. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate any attention that you've paid to this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about where this resonated for you or did not. Thank you again.